All right, and we are live. Welcome to our webinar on climate change and health. To all of those who are watching us live, we're really sorry for the delay. There was a bit of a technical glitch, as there sometimes is. But now that Game of Thrones has ended, you have time to spend your time also watching just stuff on changing climates. Not winter is coming, but summer is coming probably, or the heat is coming to us. And today we specifically talk about health, and what we have and who we have with us are two leading experts. I'm just going to introduce. So there is Amir from Egypt. He's a member of the student organization he will introduce you in a minute, who's working on these issues. And also I'm very happy to introduce Dirmi to you, who's working on these important climate change and health topics for the World Health Organization. Dirmi, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Thanks very much. So yes, my name is Dermot Campbell-Lendrum. I lead the climate change and health team at World Health Organization headquarters in Geneva, and I've been leading that program for about 7 or 8 years now.
Wow, so we'll just jump into asking a lot of questions in a second, but before that, there's also, Amir, can you tell us a bit about what you do and who you are?
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Amr Rahman. I'm a final year medical student from Egypt, from Tanta University, and I'm an active member in the International Federation of Medical Students Association, the IFMSA, for the last 4 years, and I have been really involved in the climate change topic. I have also been interning with the Climate Change and Health Unit, led by Diarmid in the WHO in Geneva headquarters. The last COP in Morocco. Yeah, and I'm very happy to be with you today.
Yeah, awesome. It sounds really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to hear a bit of your expertise and insights. But before that, I just wanted to ask Dirmit a bit more broadly, because if we talk about climate change, people think of rising sea levels and heat waves, but I guess not everyone out there makes the connection to health. So can you tell us a bit, why does the World Health Organization work on climate change specifically, and what is it, what you're still concerned about there?
Yes, thanks. The reason that WHO has worked on climate change for several years is that many of our largest public health problems that we deal with are actually highly sensitive to climate conditions. I mean, we see this on our television screens. You were talking about Game of Thrones earlier. If you watch your television screens in the last few weeks, it's very much, as like Al Gore puts it, a nature hike through the book of Revelations. We see floods, we see storms in different parts of the world. And people can understand that people's lives are affected by extreme weather events, whether it's cyclones and floods in Houston, or the even more severe impacts of the very heavy rains in Southeast Asia. So we know people's lives are affected, but I think people also understand that people are killed directly in these events. It also facilitates the transmission of waterborne disease. It facilitates transmission of some diseases transmitted by insects. It even causes problems that we're not necessarily expecting, but can be serious health issues, such as chemical contamination that we're now seeing associated with the floods in Houston. So we know that these extreme weather events impact health. We also know that as we continue to load pollution into the global atmosphere, we're basically increasing the energy, increasing the chaos in the system. So we can expect more extreme weather events, we can expect more health impacts from those. You also mentioned sea level rise. If you're living in a small island in the Pacific or the Caribbean, you're concerned about sea level rise, not just because it starts to flood your house, but it can also inundate your water source or flood away your healthcare facility. And those are just the immediate extreme events. We also know that diseases like malaria or cholera or other forms of diarrheal disease or even undernutrition are highly sensitive to climate and weather conditions. So as we make our climate more unstable, as we increase the average temperature, we increase floods and droughts and so on, we're also putting the environmental determinants of health at risk. what we mean by that is our supplies of fresh water, our supplies of food, and so on. And WHO now estimates that by the year 2030, we will be conservatively increasing death counts by about 250,000 people a year due to the impacts of our own actions on the global climate. So for all of those reasons, WHO has been engaging for several years and is now really ramping up its efforts to protect people's health from climate change. And if I can just take 1 more minute of your time, the other half of the story is that the things that we need to do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions are actually a massive public health opportunity. Aside from the health impacts of extreme weather events and so on, we lose about 6.5 million lives every year to air pollution, indoor and outdoor, basically from polluting energy sources. Now, many of these are the same polluting energy sources which are also driving climate change. So as we do what we need to do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, reduce carbon emissions in general, we have a massive opportunity to improve our lives by reducing the air pollution problem. We also have opportunities through more sustainable diets, which are better for your health, but also have a lower carbon footprint, more sustainable transport systems, which also cut air pollution, but also make it easier to get the necessary amount of physical activity in their lives. So those are the two messages, the two reasons for us to engage. One, we have to protect people's lives from climate risks, and the other is we have a massive opportunity to improve health as we address climate change. And improving health is actually one of the best arguments, we think, for acting on climate change.
Wow, that was a great overview, and obviously this just touches on so many issues. But let me get back to what you said at the end, when you talked about air pollution and these massive side effects it has for people's health and lives. Can you tell us, like, that there probably is also a huge health bill that societies have to pay for coming from fossil fuels? Can you tell us a bit of, like, how much you think it costs societies or states to run by fossil fuels in terms of the health impacts, and what would happen if that actually is counted into, let's say, the prices for oil or coal?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. As I said, we lose about 6.5 million lives every year. That's probably about the same number that we lose from smoking or almost any other health risks that you can think of. And yet those health costs, those damages to health, are never actually included in the price that people pay for fossil fuels. So we know we need to generate energy. Our society runs on energy and electricity. We need energy for our transport systems, and people are happy to pay for those. The problem is that has a whole series of side effects if we're using polluting fuels, and the largest of those side effects is the damage to health. Nobody pays that bill other than the people who lose their health or lose their lives because of the polluting energy sources. So there is sometimes a debate about the support that cleaner forms of energy receive, sometimes in the form of subsidies, government support, and so on. But in fact, the largest subsidy that exists in global energy supplies is the subsidy that we're effectively paying to polluting energy sources, because we're not including the health damages in those costs. And so in general, across the board, for energy supplies, fossil fuel energy supplies in general, the International Monetary Fund estimates that we, as a global society, subsidize those polluting energy sources by over I think it's $5.3 trillion a year. Now, to put that into perspective, that is more than all governments around the world actually spend on healthcare. And so when we have these debates about trying to pay the cost of moving to cleaner energy sources, it's absolutely essential that we take into account the costs we're already paying in terms of lost health and lost lives by not taking that into account when we burn highly polluting fuels.
Wow, that were massive numbers, and really impressive in a sad way. But I kind of want now really to bring on Amir to this discussion, because he's working as a young student on those issues, or in a student network, and I wonder what is your experience then if you try to change those challenges from the perspective of a young person? How do you think this is going,
Okay.
especially in climate negotiations, as you mentioned COP before?
Yeah, definitely. So like I have a presentation. Can I use a presentation? Like I share the screen. Follow. Okay. All right. Andrea, guys, can you hear me?
Yes, and we can see your screen.
Yeah. Okay. So you can hear me now, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Perfect. So like just to go very briefly, like I just want to introduce a bit about what is IFMSA and like what we are really doing. So IFMSA is International Federation of Medical Students Association. It's an international organization for medical students worldwide. It's found in more than 120 countries all over the world, and its main vision is to connect the medical students' main global health issues and main global health challenges in the future, and to equip the students with the skills and advocacy capabilities to be able to take the leadership roles on the local and global level. And like, there is no doubt that one of the most important challenges that we are working on is climate change, and that's what we will be focusing on during like today's webinar. So like I would just try to take from what Diarmid was just saying about the effects of climate change on health, and just like ask like why climate change matters for the future health professionals, because this was not clear a few years ago as it's clear now. With all the evidence and statistics we have, like there are 6.5 million people die every year from air pollution. So when we know that all this number of people dying is dying from a preventable cause, then there's something really matter for the future health professionals, especially for us as like medical students and other health students. We are the physicians of the future and for the next century. So we should really care about the importance of the environment our future patients are living in. And that's why there is no doubt that these days, like all the medical students or almost all medical students are aware of the importance of climate change. And especially in IFMSA, we are doing so many efforts in order to educate and make students learn more about how climate change is really important and is really effective in the health and the future of our patients. So like I just say like from my experience during the last years working in IFMSA, what we have been doing and what are the other opportunities for students who would love to get engaged, and like not just students, but even young people who would like to get engaged with climate change negotiations happening now. So like for IFMSA, I'd say we have been working on two main vectors. The first one is the capacity building. So this happens through organizing different workshops. We have like various meetings throughout the year, and we have different workshops for students. And we invite people from WHO and from other organizations who can really have experience in teaching students about the importance of this topic for their future careers. In addition, we have developed like this, as shown in the screen, the training manual of climate change and health. It's a manual that we developed in cooperation with the WHO. The link later on. It can really help any students or young people who are motivated to organize or conduct a workshop for other students and young people to educate them about the importance of climate change effects on health and how can we prevent these impacts. Doing like other capacity building opportunities. For example, we have cooperation with the WHO Climate Change and Health Unit, where we have interns going there every year. Like I was myself an intern last year, and it's going on the process. The second like main vector, it would be advocacy. So IFMSA during the last 3 or 4 years, or even more, like more than this, but especially during the 3 or 4 years before the COP21 agreement, we have been sending delegations to all the meetings of UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. We have been really involved during like the negotiations during the ADB sessions before the COP21. We have been always trying to attend all the meetings and all the negotiations, and it was really great to see how health, like the importance of health in the climate change negotiations increased year by year. Like it was at the beginning, it was not in the center of the negotiations, and people were like rarely mentioning health during talking about climate change, and there was like many other topics more prioritized than health during the negotiations. But during the last years, it has been very well noticed that people realize more the importance of health and how health should be in the center of the negotiations if we want to reach more sustainable agreement, and like people care about their health. So that's why like it was really impressive to see how health was mentioned in the Paris Agreement afterwards, and it was really successful. Regarding other advocacy, we are trying to advocate with our students in the universities to include the effects of climate change and health in the curricula. Like this has been a very strong challenge because not many medical schools around the world, unfortunately, include climate change and environmental health in their curricula. For example, here in Egypt, we don't have like really this point in our curricula, but this has been a priority for us to try to because we have students in almost like as I said at the beginning, in more than 120 countries, so it's really easy to try to make like massive advocacy and try to include more to encourage more universities to focus on this point, especially the climate change and health, due to its importance in the current day. So what we can do more, I just speak more about like from my perspective as medical students and health students, what we can do more in this aspect. So first, like the first of all is raising the awareness. Like this is, I think, the most important single thing we have to do, either on the individual level or on the community level. We have to keep raising awareness about how to avoid climate change impacts, how to try to fight these challenges. And to try to lead by example. Like even when we are doing the advocacy, we try to lead by example. The second thing, which I also said earlier about advocacy in our universities, to try to have more educational opportunities for people to learn about climate change, not just in medical schools, but even in other schools. Yeah, and lastly, like something else we can talk, like already Ahmed has referred to this point, but try to focus more on the health co-benefits that we can get from working on climate change. So, for example, trying to like make people see what will happen if they tried other alternative, and like how this can impact their health positively. Like in addition to reducing the climate change, how can this affect the health? So, for example, like our health systems, our hospitals, if we can try to advocate our health systems to try to use more sustainable and more eco-friendly ways in the health system themselves. Yeah, and so like, yeah, I think like we have a lot to do more, but yeah, so far we are doing a good job. So, yeah.
Wow, thanks. It was really a great overview of the awesome work you do around this topic. And you mentioned COP and climate politics several times, apart from all the raising awareness, which is obviously super important. But we're now just a few months before the next climate conference, which is going to happen in November in Germany. And I wondered if I could kind of channel this back to you, dear Mid. What are your expectations and hopes for the COP that comes up in November? And also maybe as a second part of the question, more generally, what do you think, because probably not everything will be solved, there will be the next step following the COP?
Thanks. Yeah, I think you put it very well. We do have expectations of the COP in November, and I think the world has expectations of the climate process. In Paris, we finally got an agreement, and the right to health was on the front page of that agreement, and it also has the potential health co-benefits. And hopefully nobody has fooled themselves that has fixed the problem. That was only just agreeing to fix the problem. And so what the subsequent COPs aim to do is to actually try and ensure that countries are living up to their obligations, that countries don't basically backslide on our overall global commitment to solve this problem that basically all of the world's scientists and pretty much all of the world's population agrees is a threat to life on Earth, including to health. So in the next COP, we're extremely pleased to see that health has actually now been made one of the priorities. One of the priorities of the presidency. It'll be one of the highest level events, will be the health event. And I think this is part of the evolution that Amaro has referred to, that whereas, and that you referred to, that at the beginning this was considered to be an environmental issue or a development issue. People, I think, now are coming around to the fact that this is really about basically the habitability of Earth and the way that the health of people and the lives of people. So we're very pleased that it has been made a high priority in the COP. We also see it on the health side. So we at the World Health Organization have a new Director General within the last 2 months. And he has made the health impacts of climate and environmental change one of his 4 health priorities for the next 5 years. And if you consider all of the health issues that the world is dealing with, the fact that he is highlighting climate and environment as one of the greatest health challenges we have, I think shows just how important this issue has now become on the global stage. So we expect that health needs to be followed up through the climate negotiation process, and climate change needs to be followed up through the work of global health agencies and so on. But that's only part of the problem, part of the solution. The rest of it and the real work needs to be done in the kind of way that Amaro has referred to. National governments and international organizations respond to the demands that are put on them by populations. So if it's clear to your government that they need to act on climate change and need to protect health, and that people will no longer put up with high levels of air pollution, as we're seeing in many countries around the world, then they will act. If we don't, if we just assume that the international process will take care of it, or there's nothing we can do about it, then they won't. And so the real work that needs to be done is taking those commitments that have been made at the highest level, whether it's at the World Health Assembly or at the Climate Change COP, and as citizens and as civil society, putting pressure on our political leaders who do want to do something about it, but they need to be supported and chased up to do something about it. So I think that the most important message that we can give is that we're doing everything we can at the international level, and we need to see the support for health and for climate change from populations in general. And we are seeing it, it is rising, but the more that we can help the people to organize and to mobilize, the better.
Wow, that was a really great kind of overview, and basically like even last words. I was just going to ask like what you think about national government. You just answered that anyway, but we're kind of at the end of our webinar, unfortunately. So let me just very quickly repeat to the writers, to the young people out there, because when you just heard that there has to be put some pressure on governments and this has to be in the public debate, this is where you come in. So the last topic we chose for you to participate as a fellow, as a journalist fellow at the climate negotiations in Bonn in November is climate change and health. We'll have this webinar, we'll have additional toolkits, we'll get a lot of information from us, and then you can go out there and write. But before we end this call, I wanted to ask Amr and Yemit, if you could think of like one big change you would like to see the next 3 years in the sense of climate change and health, what would be like one thing you really would like to see going forward as like your kind of dream scenario? Maybe Amr first, and maybe just do it quickly in half a minute or something.
Okay, though, like that's a bit difficult. Like there are so many things I'd love to see, but if it's 30 seconds, I'd say to have more young people involved in the decision making and in the implementation of all the adaptation and mitigation plans, because as it's clear that without young people being a part of the solution on all aspects, not just health, but from different aspects, nothing will change. So young people should be more involved in the decision making and in the implementation of all the plans and the strategies in the next not just 3 years, but in the next like 10 or 20 years.
Wow, nice. And Jimmy?
Thanks. Well, first I'll support Amir's comment, but the other point is, I think I would be pleased if we stop pretending that we can burn fossil fuels, pollute not only our local air but the global atmosphere without paying the price. And that's what we're doing at the moment. So we need somehow or other, through mobilization, through better evidence and so on, but mainly through people's awareness, I think, basically insisting that when we're using energy sources, that we really take into full account what the implications of those energy sources are for our health and for the planet's health. And if we do that, just by doing that, just by taking that into account, we will start to make the right choices, because suddenly all of the cleaner energy sources, the more sustainable development choices, suddenly it's clear that those are the right ones to take. And so I think that's what the change we should be aiming for.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So maybe all of you writers, journalists out there, if you write about it, you can contribute to that big dream or idea. And thanks so much for watching us. Once again, sorry for the slight delay. And we're really looking forward to see your articles, your blog articles about the very important issue of climate change and health. And yeah, thanks for watching us. Bye.